Okay, so well, forget this for a minute. Now that you've successfully installed Python and Wing, let's actually make our first program. So um, if you don't have the Wing icon here on the desktop, if it wasn't installed, the shortcut wasn't installed. If you're using Windows, you can type on the little search box. You can type Wing, and we can open this up. And it takes, I guess, a little bit of time to load. Okay, so again, this is a snake game that we worked on last year, so I'm going to close this just for a minute. But you can always change the background on Wing. You can go to Tools. Actually, it's under Preference, Edit, and then you click Preferences. And you can click on User Interface. And the color palette here, you can change it to whatever you want. I like for my screen there to be a black background, but there's all kinds of different things. So you click on one, and if you apply it, it changes it up for you. And so pick the one you like. Obviously, there is no issue with any of the other ones. Usually when you first install, it's white, so it's up to you. Okay, now at this point, we're going to write our first Python script. For that, I am going to ask that you, maybe on your desktop or under Documents, wherever you want, you make a new folder. So File, New Folder, and you call it APCSP. And that's where you're going to store all of your files, okay? All of them. And so right now it's empty. Oh, if I double click it, there's nothing in it because we haven't made a script. So I go to Wing, and then if I click here, it makes a new file. And here's my new untitled Python file. So because I haven't saved it, it hasn't been given a name. Now there's two things that I want to make sure that you understand. We can actually write Python code here. Print hi. How are you? I believe it's maybe something that we printed last time. There's a comma there that I am missing. Oh, no need for the semicolon. So hi, how are you? And it prints. There's also another command called input. How, oh, I need the quotes. How old are you? And notice the difference between the print command and the input command. The print just prints, and your Python basically terminates. The code is done. Input prints how old are you, but then it waits. Notice how the cursor is blinking here? It's waiting for an answer, and so I would put here 32. And then afterwards it terminates, and once you see these three little arrows, that means it's done. And so there's a difference. We'll learn about those two. We'll learn about print right now and then input later on. Now, what I want us to do here is to go to File, and I want to save as. And I do want you to navigate to the folder. In this case, mine is on the desktop. I'm actually not going to be saving my files here, but this is just for your instruction here. And we can give our Python file a name. I'm going to call this the print, because that's what it's going to do. This Python file is going to print. Now I'm going to save. And now notice the name changed up here, python.py. So that extension is short for Python. I said Python, print.py. And now we're going to write our code in here. We are only going to use this, what we call the Python shell, and you can see right here, restart shell. We can restart the Python shell. We're only going to use this if we're like trying to figure out how to do something, but we're not sure. Like we want to run it and see if it works. But whatever you write on the Python shell doesn't get saved. So if you were to close the Wing editor, you lose anything that's on here. Whereas if you write code and you save it on a file, then you can open that file later on. Now Python, when you run Python, it runs the code in the order in which you write it. So in this case, I'm going to print my name is Octavio. And so that's the first command. And then I'm going to print I teach at Imperial High School. Okay, and if I do, by the way, the shortcut for saving, in case you're not aware of, it's Control and then the letter S. So you have to press those two keys at the same time. And now if I play this, it runs my script and it prints on in this window we call the Python shell window. Notice it says evaluate print.py, which is the name of the file. And this is fine. It printed them in sequence. First it printed my name is Octavio, then it printed I teach at Imperial High School. That's fine. But I don't want us to get in the habit of writing our code like this. And there's going to be reasons why that we can discuss later. What I want us to get in the habit is of defining what we call a function. And so I'm going to say def. That's a keyword. Notice how it changes color. That's because in Python, that word def means something. And then I'm going to define a function called main. And then every function that we define needs to be followed by a set of parentheses like that. And at the end, we need to place a colon. And when we press enter, now notice how the code is indented. And anything that is indented after this definition, after we define this main function, anything that is indented lives in this function. And so what does the main function do? It prints these two lines of code and that's it. And so if I save, I do Control S and then I run my program. Now nothing prints. And the reason is that when you define a function, and I'll write a comment here so we can see what a comment looks like. In Python, a comment starts with the pound symbol. What we have done in line 2 is we've defined the main function. And sometimes we call functions methods. Main method. So if I say main method or main function, I'm talking about the same exact thing. We actually reserve the word method for functions that live within a class, and that's something that we'll learn later. But if I use them interchangeably, it's because they mean the same thing in my head. So we define the function. Let's define a line 2. The main function does two things. It just print to the screen. That's all it does. Notice these are comments, and comments are only for our purpose when we're reading our code, because they're ignored when we run our program. And so if I save this and I run, nothing happened in the sense that nothing different happened, but there is a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Now the reason why this is not printing is because the two print statements now live in the main function, and the only way that you can execute any line of code within a function, in this case the main function, is by placing a call or executing the main function. So execute main. I'll write like that. And the way we execute a function is just by writing the name of that function, and I always follow it with a set of parentheses. We don't have a colon here at the end. What line 8 does is it basically says we go through line 1 through 5, and we've defined this main function. We've said, hey, this main function exists and it's going to print these two statements. And then on line 7 we have a comment that says that on line 8, we're going to execute that function, meaning we're going to run the code inside the main function. So if I save now and I run, it prints again, my name is Octavio. I teach at Imperial High School, so on and so forth, right? Now, what we're going to get in the habit of doing is writing code in this main function. Think of the main function as the place where everything starts. Everything is going to start in the main function. Does it have to? The answer is no. It doesn't have to start there, but that's the format that we're going to take because we're going to be writing more and more functions as we continue. And writing functions helps keep your code where it's supposed to be so that it's not all over the place and hard to follow. So we call this encapsulation. You're encapsulating these two lines of code. You're putting them together in a function. And so in this example, although yes, we printed, but printing is a very easy task here. It's actually pretty easy to do. The main topic in this lecture is the concept of this main function and defining functions in general. Okay, so on the next video, we'll keep looking at how we're going to keep coding with Python.